coming at you guys with another live stream. As I told you guys, I was going to be pulling up on you guys, doing a lot more live content, live shows, and things of that nature for you guys. But I do want to talk a little bit about some Atlanta Falcons news as far as mini camp. And then we're going to jump into the topic of the night, which I want to talk about GM Terry Fontenot, and has he done enough this offseason to put this Atlanta Falcons team in position to be contenders in the NFC and also contenders to possibly play for a Super Bowl this upcoming season? But with that being said, I do want you guys to hit that like button for your boy. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. If you enjoy my content, if you would like to support the channel via Cash App, it's the $ Jew Talk Sports. If you would like to super chat, you can do that as well on the channel. Super stickers, we appreciate it all over here. But I do appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I hope that you guys are having a blessed Tuesday. I hope you guys are having a blessed week so far. But without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the chat. Make sure you guys share out this content so the people know where we at. But I'm gonna jump right into the chat and make sure you guys say what's up in the chat so I can shout you out, shout you guys out as well. The first one I see in here is King Treyway. He said, "What's up, Jew?" Or "What's good, Jew?" Tony Hall is in the building. He says, "Good evening, Jew." Georgia, Texas boy says, "What up, Jew?" AFN and Falcons family. The new era is here. Atlanta Falcons will rise in 2025. And John St. Clair has pulled up as well. He says, "Hey, Jew, what's going on, John?" So I appreciate you guys for joining me this evening. I'm not going to hold you guys too long. You guys know I like to keep my streams within an hour 30 minutes. But, I definitely want to get you guys questions as well and interact with you guys as well. But just to start off the show, I do want to talk about mandatory mini camps that have taken place today. And basically the news around the NFL, especially at Flowery Branch, is that quarterback Kirk Cousins was at mandatory mini camps, which is not a surprise to me. I've been stating this for ever since last season when Kirk Cousins got benched, that Kirk Cousins is a team first guy. He is a God fearing man. He is one of those guys that puts the team first in most situations. And I felt like even after his benching, we seen Kirk Cousins basically support Michael Penix even after being benched. We know he didn't agree with being benched at that time. We know that Kirk Cousins is ultra competitive, a guy that has played at a really high level for a really long time in the NFL. But we seen him, last year after being benched, still support Michael Penix, be right there for him. And Michael Penix kind of talked about it today when they did the press conference with both Kirk Cousins and they did the interview with Michael Penix after mini camps practice today. And both of those guys basically stated the same thing. Kirk Cousins talked about, being supportive of the quarterback room and things of that nature and working together, working hand in hand. Talked about at this point, they're moving forward. He's not going to worry about the trade rumors and things of that nature, that he's focused on this season. He's focused on being an Atlanta Falcon. He's focused on being that help for Michael Penix on anything that he needs, being that veteran in the room. And I really feel like that's the smart thing to say. If you're Kirk Cousins, I really feel like that's the best thing for the Atlanta Falcons and for Kirk Cousins at this point. Michael Penix talked about those guys really being close, both him and Kirk Cousins. And last year, he learned how to be a professional. He got to sit behind Kirk Cousins and learn different things, learn the nuances of the NFL and things of that nature. So I definitely think that it was really, really interesting just to hear Kirk Cousins kind of talk and Michael Penix kind of talk. And basically, these guys seem like they're on one accord at this point as far as the Atlanta Falcons. I stated that Kirk Cousins wasn't going to be a locker room cancer. That's not the type of guy that he is, even though he's a competitor. And he even mentioned today when they asked him, does he want to be a starter in the league? He still believes that he can start, and he still wants to be a starter in the league. But I really feel like everything got off on the right foot at mandatory mini camps today, with Kirk Cousins saying the right things as a veteran in this league. And Michael Penix also saying the right thing. So I really feel like if Kirk Cousins is on this 2025 roster, I really feel like it could be a bonus for this Atlanta Falcons team, because I've stated many of times that Michael Penix is one of those guys that's a very talented quarterback, but he has had injuries in his past, a lot of injuries in college. So having a Kirk Cousins on the roster is not a bad thing. I really feel like Kirk Cousins is arguably the best backup, or one of the best backups in the league, because I do believe on another roster he could possibly compete for a starting job. But having him on this roster, him knowing Zach Robinson offense because he was a starter last year, it's only a value for the Falcons having that depth and things of that nature. So if someone does go down, say Michael Penix does go down at some point, even if it's not something serious, if it's some type of like ankle sprain or something like that, or if he has to come out of a game for whatever reason, concussion, is he if he's in concussion protocol, you have a guy that you can turn to in Kirk Cousins, and he's going to be able to come in and hit the ground running because he's familiar with the Drake Londons, the Bijan Robinsons, the Darnell Moonies, all of these guys that was on the team last year. Kirk Cousins does have that chemistry with those guys. So with that being said, I do want to go ahead and just jump back in the chat really quick and say what's up to you guys that have joined me since I've been talking. And let's see. Spark says, want to hear the quote of the day. Dre Murphy says, what it do, what the business is, everyone. How y'all doing and feeling on this Tuesday night? And Anthony White says, Terry did a lot better in the draft than free agency, but I understand some of the money issues the Falcons have. It's time for all these picks on offense to pay off. Defense will get more patient. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I definitely think that the this Atlanta Falcons team and Terry Fontenot has done a great job, and I'm gonna jump right into that in just a moment. Anthony White, as far as that's the topic of the night. And Dre says, who is the defense of back they brought in one day last week named Josh Thompson? They got rid of a guy named Benny Sapp the third. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Josh Thompson and Benny Sapp. Both of those guys, I really feel like are rotational guys. I don't know if they'll actually make the team. Benny Sapp was on our practice squad for a lot of the portion of last season. So I don't think that Josh Thompson, or Benny Sapp is going to be on the roster, like the active roster. They may be one of those guys that be on the practice squad, but both of those guys have been in the league for a little bit. But I don't really feel like neither one of those guys is going to have a huge impact on the team outside of being a practice squad or possibly camp body type situation. So I wouldn't feed too much into that, Dre Murphy. But let's see. And John says, good to hear Kirk come out and put the offseason behind and ready to do business. Yeah, exactly. I mean, at this point, it's just like it's time to move forward. I think Kirk Cousins at this point can read the writing on the wall. And I've said this for the last couple weeks. It's like with Kirk Cousins, pretty much, I know he feels that he still can play. I do think he still could possibly be a starter in the league, depending on what the team he's on. I do feel like Michael Penix is the best quarterback for our roster to be the number one quarterback as far as the starter. But at this point, the league has spoken. Nobody was willing to trade for Kirk Cousins and give the Falcons the capital that they wanted. Even the Pittsburgh Steelers went out and signed Aaron Rodgers, who I really feel like at this point is pretty much cooked as far as Father Time has passed him by. I do think that Aaron Rodgers, he was a really, really good player when he was with Green Bay throughout the years. But at this point, we've seen him with the Jets last season, and he just doesn't have the mobility similar to with Kirk Cousins. He can't move it hardly anymore and get out of the way of pressure and things of that nature. So I really feel like I said, the league spoke. Kirk Cousins was on the market and has been on the market since the end of last season, coming into the free agency, the draft, and nobody was willing to give the capital that the Falcons wanted for Kirk Cousins. So what that tells me is the league doesn't see Kirk Cousins as a high-end starter anymore, or even a middle of the pack type player as a starter. A lot of these teams that needed quarterbacks, They said that they would rather go with either a rookie guy, a journeyman quarterback, rather than pay Kirk Cousins or sign Kirk Cousins. So that tells me a lot about what the league personally feels about Kirk Cousins as a starting, QB at this point. But with that being said, I do want to go ahead and jump right into the topic of the night, which Anthony White was mentioning about Terry Fontenot. And what I really want to know from you guys can put it in the comment section, is what do you guys feel about Terry Fontenot as far as how he did in this offseason? Personally, I think that he did do a great job, as far as he did enough, more than enough in free agency and in the draft to fill the holes that was missing in the depth portion of this Atlanta Falcons team, but also bringing in impact players. You guys heard me say numerous times prior to the draft that the Falcons needed to bring in more impact players on the defensive side of the ball, because we've spent a lot of draft capital on the offensive side of the ball over the last 3 seasons. You went out and got Kyle Pitts. You went out and got Bijan Robinson. You went out and got Drake London. You signed Darnell Mooney. You signed Kirk Cousins, and then last season you drafted Michael Penix Jr. in the first round. So I really feel like this draft and free agency was probably the best offseason that Terry Fontenot, personally, I believe that he's had as an Atlanta Falcons GM, with him going in and bringing in guys like Leonard Floyd, who I think could come in and immediately have impact as far as the edge rusher. You went in and brought guys like Jordan Fuller in, who's familiar with both Leonard Floyd and Jordan Fuller, played for Raheem Morris with the LA Rams and helped them win a Super Bowl. They were on that defense, coached by Raheem Morris as a defensive coordinator. So they did a good job, I feel like, in this offseason of Terry Fontenot bringing in guys that Raheem Morris was familiar with. And then I also think that they did a really good job in the draft, with Terry Fontenot bringing in, double dipping in the draft with Jalen Walker, who's an impact player, doubling down and bringing in a James Pierce Jr., which was also an impact type guy in the first round. And then you went in, brought in guys like Xavier Watts, who I think is another guy who could have easily been a first rounder. He was, everybody was stating, all of the pundits was saying he was going to be either a late first rounder or early second rounder. He ends up dropping, I think, to the third round where we took him. You brought in Billy Bowman Jr. So you have a lot of these guys that they were able to bring in that I think are gems, and that's going to help fill the voids that were left on the defensive side of the ball. I really feel like they brought in guys that fit what Raheem Morris and what Jeff Ulbrich wants to do, as far as being fast and physical, as far as having guys that are explosive athletes. We know last year, I talked about it numerous times, that we just didn't have the athleticism on the outside. We weren't getting enough production from guys like Lorenzo Carter. We weren't getting production at times from certain players that was on this Atlanta Falcons defensive line at times. So I really feel like they did a good job of bringing in young guys that are athletic. Jalen Walker's ultra athletic. James Pierce Jr. is super athletic. Then you brought in Leonard Floyd, who's another athletic guy on the outside. And then you drafted Ruka Rororo for a 3-tech. He's another guy that's supremely athletic as well. And then you still have guys like Braylon Trice that you drafted last year, who's pretty athletic for himself. So I really feel like Terry Fontenot has done everything to put this coaching staff and these players in positions to succeed. I don't think he could have did anything else based off of the salary cap and based off of, what the Falcons, had to spend in free agency. I really think he did, the most that he could, as far as let's, find impact players on the defensive side of the ball, because I think last year the offense was complete, as far as we really didn't make any huge adjustments. If you look at the roster on the offensive side of the ball, there weren't many changes. The starters are going to be the starters from last year for the most part. The players outside of Michael Penix being the starter, you only lost Kirk Cousins, who will not be the starter at quarterback. And then at the center position, you lost Drew Dahlman. and you have Ryan Newsel stepping in. So I really feel like he did more than enough, and that's why I put down that he's the real MVP in the thumbnail. I really feel like he could easily win Executive of the Year if this Atlanta Falcons team goes on to have a deep playoff run and they win a lot of games this season, win 11, 12 games. I could really see Terry Fontenot being a guy that gets noticed around the league by his brilliance of him being a super aggressive in the draft, being aggressive in his mindset as far as the way that they've constructed this Atlanta Falcons team, bringing in and infusing it with a lot of young talent, but a lot of guys that have a huge upside and huge ceiling. So, with that being said, I want to get you guys thoughts and things of that nature. So you guys definitely, drop your comments. Give me your thoughts on Terry Fontenot. Do you believe that he's done enough this offseason to put the Falcons in contention as far as being contenders in the NFC? I definitely think that he's done more than enough to put the Falcons in positions to have a really good season this year. And with that being said, let me scroll here. All right, so Dre says, Drew, what is up with all the hype going after a freaking injury prone Zier Alexander? Me personally, I'm going with DBs. With the DBs we already got on the team, give them a freaking chance. Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, with that Dre, I don't think that Jair Alexander is going to be an Atlanta Falcon, and that's kind of that'll fit in this conversation as well as far as do we need to make another splash signing? And that's why I wanted to ask the question because there's been a lot of names coming up, the Jalen Ramseys, the Jair Alexanders. Do the Falcons really need another big splash signing to complete this, team or roster? Personally, I don't believe so. I really feel like there's enough has been done. Now, would I take more talent, meaning bring if we are able to bring and fit Jalen Ramsey under the cap somehow, or if we're able to bring in a Jair Alexander, you guys know that I believe in depth and strength in numbers, and I wouldn't mind having those guys on this roster, but I don't think that is needed. I really feel like we've done a really, really good job of having a mixture of older talent or players that are veteran guys and bringing in younger guys. Like you have the AJ Terrells, you have the Mike Hughes, and these guys are like still in their 20s, mid 20s to late 20s. But then you still have younger guys like the Clark Phillips that's been developing over the last years. You brought in Billy Bowman Jr., you brought in Xavier Watts, but you mixed them in with the Jesse Bates and these guys that have been in the league for a while. And I really feel like that's important in the NFL, that you have to have a variety of youth, but also you want to infuse it with some veteran type players that's been around the block a couple times, like a Jesse Bates who's played at the highest level in a Super Bowl with the Bengals. And that's the value that you lost with Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett was one of those guys that also played in the Super Bowl with the Falcons. So he was one of those guys that kind of helped the Ruka Rororos, the Brandon Dorleses. They talked about that today at minicamp, that he was one of the guys that they looked to as far as learning how to be a professional, learning how to have a schedule, being in the weight room and things of that nature, and doing the right things on and off the field to have their body prepared for Sundays. So I definitely think that the Falcons don't necessarily need another big splash because Terry Fontenot to me has done a good job. But I wouldn't be surprised, like if the Falcons was able to bring in another, big name player like a Jalen Ramsey who wants to play with the Falcons because he likes Raheem Morris. He's familiar with Raheem Morris's scheme, and he talks very highly. When Raheem Morris was hired by the Falcons last season, off season as the head coach, Jalen Ramsey was one of those big name players that spoke out and stated that Raheem Morris is one of the better coaches in the league and that, he loved playing for him when he was the LA Rams defensive coordinator. So, I wouldn't be surprised if a Jalen Ramsey somehow found his way onto the Falcons. Now they would have to do some maneuvering in the cap, and that's where it could create an issue. But I've seen teams, like I always talk about the Eagles. I've seen Howie Roseman somehow, some way sign each and every one of their players and they always are signing another big name player. It wouldn't surprise me if the next thing you know tomorrow, da-na-na, da-na-na, breaking news, the Philadelphia Eagles have signed Zier Alexander, because it seems like they always are one of them teams that they find a way to bring in top talent. They always find a way to do it. They find a way to maneuver that cap to get big name players, on their roster. So, we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I really feel like I stated this in my video I did about Zier Alexander, that he's a guy that's had a lot of injuries, throughout his career. In the last 2 seasons, he's only played 14 games out of the last 2 seasons. So last year he played 7 games. And the year before that, 2023, he only played 7 games. So I really feel like because the Packers were paying him big money, that's the reason why they decided to move on. As they say in the league, the best ability is availability. So no matter how talented you are, if you can't stay on the field and you're making top dollar, usually a team is going to try to find a way to get rid of you and see if they can bring in younger talent for the lesser of the price, because they're not getting the most bang for their buck. Now, if I were the Green Bay Packers, I wouldn't have moved Jair Alexander, because I really feel like you don't get better with losing top talent. And I say this all the time, but I understand the move, because they're looking at, he's never available when they really need him for the most part. The last couple of years, he's had crucial injuries, and that's kind of held back the Green Bay Packers because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. Let's see here. And Dre says, Terry, baby, please save the the baby. Fontenot has done nothing but a wonderful job since he stepped foot in the A town. Point blank in the period. End of discussion. Yeah, I mean, Terry has done his job. I've said that from the get go. I think he did a good job when he first was hired of helping us clean up our cap situation that we was in. Because those first couple years with Arthur Smith, we didn't have a whole lot of cap space. I think he's done a good job for the most part of identifying talent, even the guys that have been injury prone, like the Troy Andersons of the world. I think he still has did a good job of finding talent, because to me, Troy Anderson's a good player. You can't, you know, you'll never know if a guy's going to get injured or be injury prone throughout his career. And it's looking like it's leaning towards that way for Troy Anderson. But we've seen when Troy Anderson's out there on the field, prior to him getting injured last year, he was the defensive player of the game against the Saints. He had that pick six. He was balling out of control, and then he just went down with an injury. So at the end of the day, I really feel like Terry Fontenot, him being a former scout, he's done a really, really good job of bringing in good talent. It's just us being able to develop that talent, and for coaches to know how to put those guys in the right positions to succeed. But I think he's done a good job of identifying the talent, especially if you just look at the offensive guys that they brought in. Penix, Drake, Bejian, Kyle Pitts. Not only are those guys really good players on the field, but those guys are really good players, knock on wood, off the field. Like, we haven't had any issues with these guys being in the news, for not doing the right thing off the field. And when those guys are in between the white lines or in the locker room, you only hear positive things about the players that they brought in, as far as leadership, as far as them being good people, not only good people, but also good athletes. So I definitely think that Terry has done a real, real good job. And let's see here. And Dre says, I save whatever money we have left, if any at all, just in case of an emergency, though. Plain. Yeah, and that's what I think what's going on currently. I mean, if we look at the situation the Falcons are in, from when I looked at the cap space on the little websites and things of that nature, over the cap and all these different websites that's out there, Spot Track, they're saying that the Falcons have around $5 million remaining where they could sign somebody or something like that. And who knows what they're going to decide to do with that money. They could stash it away and try to wait and use it on, towards the bonuses for guys like Drake London, who they probably, which I made a video saying he's going to get a big contract either before this season begins, either sometime during this season or next off season. So I could easily see them just saying, like, let's keep this, this money, so we're not in the negative. And I really could see that working out for the Falcons, because if someone does go down with injury, you still have the option of calling somebody that's maybe is either on another team where you can trade for, or possibly that's still a free agent. So I don't think Jalen Ramsey is off the table. I don't think Jair Alexander is off the table. I just think that we gotta wait until we cross that bridge, because we know, like we seen last year, we had DeMarco Hellams go down in the preseason. We had Braylon Trice go down in the preseason, and that's when they went out and brought in Judon. They went and brought in Justin Simmons. So it's really gonna come down to how it all plays out. That's what it's really going to come down to. Like if somebody gets injured, I really feel like that's when they're going to go, well, now we have to bring in somebody that can play at that high caliber of a level and be the starting player. But we have a lot of depth. Like I mentioned, even if guys were to go down, I really feel like now on the defensive line, we're super deep in the trenches. And even on the safety side of the game, you have Helms coming back. You got Xavier Watts, and you also have Billy Bowman that can also not only play DB, but can also play safety. So you're pretty much set, as far as this roster. But I want to get you guys grades, man. Y'all drop in the comment section, like what would be your grade for Terry Fontenot this offseason? What you would give him, A, B, C, D, F. What would you grade him? I mean, personally, I would give him an A, because I think that he covered all of his bases. I don't really feel like there's one position I can point to and say, where there's an injury here, or that the Falcons are weak in this particular, position group. I really don't feel like there's any weaknesses. I feel like in years past, I could point to, okay, the defensive line, we don't have no depth, or we don't have any players that are like the splash type players, freak athlete type players. But I really feel like this year he did a good job of covering all of those bases. I don't see any position group where I'm concerned that if somebody went down, we don't have anybody that can step up. And I don't really feel like there's no positions on this squad where we don't have depth. I really feel like at every single position that you can think of, known to man in the game of football, the Falcons have a lot of depth. So that's why I feel like Terry has did a great job of building this particular roster. And Dre says, "Me too, Jew." He gives it an A. And what's up to my bro in the chat, man, Mike Sports? Y'all make sure y'all show him some love. He said, Jew. And I know you just jumped in here, bro. I want to get your thoughts too. Like, if you can tell me from a letter grade standpoint, what would you give, Raheem Morris, excuse me, what would you give Terry Fontenot in regards to his grade for the offseason? I said I would give him an A. I seen Dre Murphy said he'll give him an A. And I don't see too many other people in the chat yet giving me your grades. So y'all give me y'all grades, man. What y'all have, what would y'all give Terry Fontenot for the offseason? Like I said, I would give him an A. I don't care if you say that you would give him a B, a C, but give me your thoughts on what y'all would get, what grade y'all would give Terry Fontenot. Because personally, I think he deserves an A. I think that he's done everything, like I said, possible to put this team in positions to succeed. I really feel like there's not an excuse that you can make looking at this roster that we have, and based off of the division that we play in. Yes, we know that divisions can change year to year, but I really feel like the Falcons at this point, we are probably the most talented roster in the division. Outside of Tampa, I really feel like this Falcons roster is the best roster if you just look from top to bottom. When you talk about playmakers, when you talk about, impact players, I really feel like this Falcons team has the best roster just on paper. Now we know that the game is not played on paper. It's not some type of simulation, that it's real life. Injuries happen and things of that nature happens. So they still gonna have to line it up. But I think that the Falcons, personally, I think we have the best roster in the league. And Diamond Honey 81 says he gets an A from me. Yeah, that's why I say I say he gets an A. I mean, personally, I give him an A for his aggressiveness in the draft, and just from the things that he did, that he's shown. And Mad Mike says I have to give him an A. Jalen Walker, Pierce Watts, kept Cousins to help Penix on, of course. Yeah, exactly. I mean, at this point, that's how I look at it. I mean, I can't see, Terry Fontenot doing anything else this offseason that could have catapulted this team and get us to the next level. Because if you think about it, this team has been winning 7 or 8 games. Even when we had Arthur Smith, when we really didn't have, we had a lot of guys on 1 year deals. The first year that Coach Arthur Smith was here, this team has been middle of the pack, winning 7 to 8 games the last 4 seasons, 4 to 5 seasons. So we're knocking on the door. We just haven't been able to get over the hump. And I really feel like these guys that we, drafted and the free agents that they brought in, it should be no excuse why this team can't, kick the door in and get over the hump and get into the playoffs. Because once you get in the playoffs, and I'll keep saying this, all bets are off in the NFL. This is not the NBA where you have 7 game series where normally the best team wins, subtracting the injuries or minus the injuries. But with football, we've seen the New York Giants with Eli Manning win a Super Bowl, take down the undefeated Patriots. That just goes to show you right there that you just have to be the best team on that particular evening or on that particular day. And that's what we say any given Sunday. That's why I always say that the parity in the NFL is different. Like every team has an opportunity because it's one game. If you come out in that particular game and you have a really good game, and the other team, even if they're better on paper, if they're not on their A game, anybody can be beat in the NFL playoffs. So I really feel like this Falcons team just has to get into the dance. If they get into the dance, I really feel like we'll be able to get in there and make some noise. And let's see. But with that being said, man, y'all drop y'all comments in the chat. We have like about 30 to 40 minutes left in the show. So y'all give me y'all thoughts on anything y'all might want to have questions about. It could be about the topic tonight, about Terry Fontenot, and has he done enough to put this Falcons team in positions to succeed? Or it could just be any other questions you may have just in general about the NFL, or you can go ahead and give me your questions, in regards to the upcoming season. Because as I mentioned, mandatory mini camps kicked off today. And from what I've been hearing, we're about 87 days or 80 some days, 88 days away from kickoff. So I know that, it's starting to get closer and closer. I'm getting super excited about, the upcoming season and things of that nature. And Dre Murphy says, Jew, don't let the freaking Kitty Cats fans hear you say we got the best team in the league on paper because they think they got the best team in the division because they got Bryce Young, some more weapons. I've been checking out a lot of the Panthers the Panthers content creators and things of that nature. But personally, I told them this, directly. I was actually on my guy PPP show, Panthers Prime podcast. Y'all go check his content out. I went on his show. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was in there with my boy Red Swarm, who's an Atlanta Falcons fan as well. And we was on the. I pulled up on my guy's panel and I was telling them that I'm not afraid of Bryce Young. I really don't fear him. He was mentioning that Bryce Young is 2-1 against the Falcons in his career. He talked about the Week 18 game that they won against us last year, and I really just told him straight up, I really don't feel like the Panthers and Bryce Young. I really don't feel like the Falcons fear them. I really feel like if the Falcons would have put Penix in the game earlier last season, I really feel like we would have won the division. We wouldn't have dropped all of those games that we dropped in a row down the stretch in that last 10 to 8 game stretch after being 6-3. I really feel like the Falcons would have won probably that Chargers game that Kirk Cousins threw a bunch of interceptions in. I think we could have easily won. A couple of different of those games that came down to the wire. So I really feel like there was a lot of games that were winnable games where we just gave up the game because of poor decision making by Kirk Cousins and by Raheem Morris. And let's see. And Matt Mike says, who has the best backfield in the league? Exactly. I think, to be honest, the Falcons made it's between the Falcons, the Lions, because the Lions have, of course, Montgomery. They have Jameer Gibbs. That's a good two-headed monster. If you look at the Texans now, they have a nice two-headed monster with Joe Mixon and with Chubb, Nick Chubb. So, but I really feel like the Falcons. If I had to pick, I would take the Falcons. I like the Thunder and Lightning between Bijan and Tyler Algier. I really feel like we have an underrated duo or two-headed monster. Maybe I'm biased, but I also like the Sonic and Knuckles pairing in Detroit. I really like the Montgomery Gibbs because they're like two different style runners. They're similar to Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, where you have the Lightning and Jameer Gibbs, and you have the Thunder with Montgomery, who's a more physical, more imposing running back. But there's a couple other good duos in the league that I can't think of right off the top of my head. But I think that the Falcons definitely easily has, is one of the better duos in the league. Them and Detroit are the two that come to mind when I just think of the best duos in the game. But let's see, Dre says they are also acting like the freaking delusional Cowgirls talking about going to the freaking Super Bowl. Well, the Cowboys fans say that every year that they going to the Super Bowl. As you guys know, my wife's a Cowboys fan, but she's not one of those delusional fans. My wife doesn't say that the Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl every year. My wife doesn't even mention Super Bowl when it comes to the Cowboys. But I do like the moves that the Cowboys made, at least bringing in George Pickens. I thought that was huge because now you take some of that pressure off of a CD Lamb, who's a guy that I really think is a really, really good wide receiver. He's easily top 5 wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver in the game. But he didn't have any help over there. So they had to move him in the slot, move him outside. He was mainly the only dynamic playmaker as far as the wide receivers go for Dallas. So now them bringing in George Pickens, I really feel like that gives Dak Prescott two bona fide playmakers and guys that can make plays down the field and things of that nature. And they struggled last year with explosive plays as far as the Dallas Cowboys. So I definitely think that George Pickens' move was a great pickup for them. And this will be the first time George Pickens actually has a decent, outside of Russell Wilson, this will be the first time he has a steady quarterback and he's going to a team that's offensive minded because the Cowboys are one of them teams that, to me, they're predicated off the offense. So, and Tony Hall says, "Hey Jude, do you think the team would win a Super Bowl before Arthur Blank Sr. leaves the team? I want him and us to be the NFC South team to win a championship." I definitely think that they're going to win the Super Bowl before it's all said and done for Mr. Blank. Like I said, this year, I'm not going to say that they're going to go to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl, but I think that this is one of the better years. If the Falcons had a chance to make a deep playoff run, I really feel like this roster is set up for them to have a really good season. Now, we can't predict injuries. We can't predict, crazier things have happened throughout seasons and things of that nature. But if you're just going by how last season ended, and it looks like the Falcons were on an upward trajectory as far as Penix and the offense. The defense was not playing great at the end of the season. Of course, we had that game against the Panthers where they didn't play well, but I really feel like there's been a lot of turnover on the defense as well. Like you see a lot of the starters from last year, you have some of them that's here, like the secondary, but the front seven, you lost Grady, you brought in it probably Walker and Pierce on the outside and Floyd. All of those guys are new to the Falcons. So this defense have been revamped. So I really feel like the biggest question mark heading into this season, if this helps you out, Tony, is the defense because we don't know what to expect. I know that this defense is going to be predicated off of being fast and physical and trying to force turnovers, but we don't know how good they're really going to be because to me, the offense was really good last year. It was really, a couple of missed opportunities on offense and defense that lost us some of those games last year. But the offense, I believe, ranked number 6 in the league, if I'm not mistaken, like in total offense last year under Zach Robinson. So that shows that the offense was getting the job done. Outside of the turnovers, they were, putting up points and stuff, especially earlier in the season. And I really feel like the Achilles heel for last year's team was the defense. And Mike says, are Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson better than the Lions? Yeah, I think that that's a toss up. I would say that they are because I think that Bijan Robinson is better than or more dynamic than Jameer Gibbs or Montgomery. So I think that gives the Falcons the edge. Because if I had to pick between Bijan Gibbs, Algier, and Montgomery, I'm taking Bijan Robinson over all of those guys. To me, he's like a LT, LaDainian Tomlinson type. He's like a, one of them generational type running backs that you think about. The Adrian Petersons of the world with the Vikings, the Saquon Barkleys with the Eagles. When I think of Bijan Robinson, I think of an electric player, and a guy that's a huge playmaker, but like a superstar style running back, which he can catch the ball, he can score from anywhere on the field with his speed, and you're never safe as a defense. When Bijan touches the ball, he can score from anywhere on the field, and that's what makes him dangerous. Let's see. And Dre says, what do you think is going to happen to my boy, my dog, Kyle freaking Pitts, the unicorn next year? That's a good question. I really feel like that's a real big question as far as Kyle Pitts. I really don't know what's going to happen with him. I think he'll have a good season this year, but I don't know, even if he has a great season, are the Falcons going to pay him? Are the Falcons going to feel that they know how to maneuver this cap where they can get him under contract, where they can get Drake under contract, and whether they can get Bijan, in a couple years under contract and still be able to maintain. Now, good news is Jalen Walker don't need to be paid for a while. James Pierce doesn't need to be paid for a while. So hopefully those guys pan out because all of those guys are on a rookie deal. And even Michael Penix Jr., he doesn't need to be paid for a while. So the Falcons are kind of in good shape. Now, what I will say is if the Falcons want to win a Super Bowl, it needs to be in this window while Michael Penix Jr. is under that rookie deal. And I've said this numerous times as well on my channel throughout videos and things of that nature. The better teams in the league, win Super Bowls when their young quarterback is under that rookie contract because you don't have to pay that quarterback the hundreds of millions of dollars that's going to take up a lot of your cap space, eat up a lot of that space. So the Brock Purdy's of the world, when you seen them go to the Super Bowl and you seen them have stacked teams like Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, when they had those type of guys, that was because they had that quarterback in Brock Purdy that was on that small deal, that rookie deal, because he was the last pick in the draft. Now we're really about to find out, can the 49ers rebuild that team? Because we've seen that they had to lose a lot of defensive pieces because they just paid Brock Purdy that big contract. So the real question now is, can they revamp that team after the fact, now that he's no longer under the rookie deal? So if I'm the Falcons, I'm trying to win as early as possible. I'm trying to win now while Michael Penix is still making pennies on the dollar, and he's not making what majority of these quarterbacks are making, and what if he balls out, what he's going to be making. Because a lot of these quarterbacks now are making 40 and 50 million a year, which is crazy to me. But that's what the going rate is right now. And Diamond says, I agree. I always bet on Bijan and Gibbs. Yeah, both of those guys electric. Yeah, Gibbs is not too far behind Bijan. I think I give Bijan the edge over Jameer Gibbs, but those both of those guys are dangerous. They can score from anywhere on the field. Electric, can catch the ball out of the backfield, can run the ball, can block. Because I think that's another thing that people sleep on Bijan. Bijan has developed into a really good pass protector. And I can't say that about all running backs, even star running backs. Most running backs that are, super athletic and superstar types talents, you don't think about them as a blocker or a protector of the quarterback. They're usually guys that when they have the football in their hand, they're making plays. But Bijan not only is a superstar talent, but he plays the game the right way. He plays the game like he's a role player, even though he's a superstar talent. And William Amy says, what's good, fellas? What's good, man? I appreciate you joining me as always, William. And Dre says, Jude, what do you think of the Cleveland Browns? Got 5 freaking quarterbacks. How many you think they will keep, and which ones you think they will keep? That's a good question as well. And I like that you're giving me other questions outside of the Falcons. I mean, I love talking Falcons talk, but I also love talking just the football around the league. With the Browns, I really feel like Shador has a chance to be a starter at some point this season. I don't think that it's going to come game one, to be honest with you guys. I know that's been a talking point on a lot of these shows on TV, like the FS1s, like the ESPNs of the world. But I think Shador at some point, probably in the middle of the season, will get a chance to be the starter. But I'm seeing the Browns probably keep about three quarterbacks on their roster. So somebody's going to be the odd man out. Now, which ones they keep, that's a good question. They have Dylan Gabriel, they have Joe Flacco, they also have Shador Sanders. We know Deshaun Watson, I think, is injured for this season, upcoming season, because he had the Achilles injury and an ACL injury. So, it's going to be very interesting to see which ones they keep. I know Shador is going to stay. He's the only one that I have locked, and I think they also have Kenny Pickett, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So they have too many quarterbacks. To be honest with you, somebody gonna have to get traded or get on the practice squad, but somebody's getting cut, I think, as well, because they're not going into the season with five quarterbacks. That's why I said it was idiotic for the Cleveland Browns to continue to pass on Shador, draft Dylan Gabriel, then the next round take Shador when you already on the roster Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson. They already had three quarterbacks. So they should have just took Shador earlier in the draft and then called it that. I don't understand the reason why you would take Dylan Gabriel and Shador. You don't need two rookie quarterbacks when you already got three veteran quarterbacks on your roster. That was just dumb. To be honest with you guys, they would, like I said, that was just dumb. I don't even want to get caught up in that whole Shador talk because we know what that was. I said it the first night of the draft. It was foolish. With those teams that passed on Shador. And let's see. And Dre says, Drew, how many DBs you got us keeping? To be honest, that's a good question as well. I mean, I can tell you the ones that I think is going to be locks to make the team. So AJ Terrell, um, Clark Phillips, Mike Hughes, D. Alford, and Billy Bowman. Those are the five that I think are locks. The guys that I think that on the chopping block are like the Kevin Kings. I don't know if he's gonna make it, and any of those other guys we got. I don't know if we still have Natron Brooks on this team, but those guys gonna be battling it out. Kobe Bryant, he's gonna be battling it out. I don't know if he'll make the active roster, but he'll be a guy that could possibly make the team. So I say that they keep probably about 5 or 6 DBs on the team, like on the 53 roster. But it's the guys that I think on the chopping block is going to be Kevin King, um, Kobe Bryant. Those are the guys that I think are kind of going to be on the chopping block, or they're going to be competing for a practice squad spot, or possibly getting cut just all together and being a free agent again. So that's why I sit with the DBs at this point. But we'll see what happens during training camp, because training camp and preseason is going to tell the true story of what guys are going to be on the roster moving forward. Let's see. And Will Mamie says too much distractions on Kyle Pitts. No, I think Kyle Pitts is good. I think he just injured right now. Kyle Pitts is not a problem. One thing about Kyle Pitts, and like I said, a lot of these guys that we have on our team that are superstar or bona fide, could be superstar players, they have the right mindset. Kyle Pitts is not a guy that's going to say something crazy off the wall in the media, and he hasn't done anything, knock on wood, to draw attention to the team, unnecessary attention. So he's one of them guys that's going to keep his head down. He's going to do his job. He's a very mild-mannered type player, or a type person just in general, it seems like, off the field. So I don't think Kyle Pitts is a distraction at all. I think he's going to do whatever they ask him to do, and he's going to let them chips fall where they may. If he gets a contract extension, good. If he doesn't, I don't think Kyle Pitts is sweating not being able to get another contract by somebody else. Like I really feel like even if Kyle Pitts has a bad season for the Falcons, like a down season again, where he don't have a lot of yards or touchdowns, somebody will pick Kyle Pitts up in a hot second. Like if the Falcons, put Kyle Pitts on the trading block for real, or if they released him, he would be on the team. He would definitely be one of them teams that all of the teams will put in, to try to pick him up. They'll put in that waiver to pick him up because he's just that talented. You can't teach 6'6", 200 plus pounds with a four running a 4.40 yard dash. It's not many people like that. It's not many players like that. And Dre says they just picked up Drake's 5th-year option. Yep, they definitely picked up Drake's 5th-year option, which was no surprise to anybody, or it shouldn't have been. And Tony Hall says similar to the LA Rams and all that money they had tied into their players during the Super Bowl run and had to release many players afterwards. Yeah, exactly. That's how it works. Now, I think what the Rams did was smart because I'm going to ask you guys this question because I feel like sometimes when it comes to spending money, you know, the whole F them picks and all of that, I'm kind of on board with we want to win. At the end of the day, the Rams hung a banner in their stadium. They won a Super Bowl. So mission accomplished. With them trading Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford, that was a smart trade that worked out for them. A lot of people might look at it where they traded for an older quarterback, and Jared Goff had a lot more upside, and he's probably gonna play a lot more years after this over a guy Matthew Stafford who only has a few years left because he's on the back end of his career, but clearly Sean McVay knew exactly what he needed to get over the hump because he was able to do it in the first year of having Matthew Stafford. And the whole F them picks type situation with the Rams didn't set their team back or hurt them as much as a lot of people think. Because if we look last year, the LA Rams was in the divisional round, one throw away from beating the Eagles. If they complete make a touchdown in that last drive, they beat Philly in the snow in their environment. They played Philly probably. That was probably the best game that Philly got the whole playoff run was um was the Rams. The Rams gave the Philly the biggest scare in the playoffs. So I feel like if you told me we're gonna go all in and we're gonna trade away picks like they did with James Pierce, trade away first round picks for later years and things of that nature, but the Falcons are able to bring a Super Bowl to Atlanta, then so be it. Because that's not something that can be ever taken away from you. I really feel like that was the biggest problem with the 2016, year that we lost the Super Bowl. Once you're a Super Bowl champion, that can never be taken away. We can always walk around with our chests out saying the Falcons got one, just like similar to Seattle when they had the Legion of Boom. Once they got that one, they were able to poke their chest out, and that can never be taken away from that group. Russell Wilson is a champion. The Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch, those guys are champions. That can never be taken away from them. We had our opportunity to do that. Where if we would have won in 2016, who cares? I mean, what happens in those years following that? If you win the Super Bowl, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So, I mean, yeah, you want longevity and things of that nature, but if I would trade away draft picks to have a chance at a Super Bowl any day, that's just me personally. And shouts out to Bubba Got Beats with the $5 super chat. Y'all make sure y'all don't let him be the only one, man. Y'all show some love to your boy. I appreciate it. I mean, like I said, man, I love giving you guys great content, but I definitely appreciate the love when you guys super chat, when you guys send cash apps and things of that nature. And I mentioned it early in the show. If you want to send a cash app, $ Jew Talk Sports. If you want to hit that, the super chat or the super sticker, we appreciate all that over here, man. I appreciate you guys. I do it for you guys and do it for the love of, our Atlanta Falcons. And Rise Up Dirty Bird says, do you think people are sleeping too much on Michael Penix? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that Michael Penix is a dark horse for offensive player of the year because this offense is quarterback friendly that Zach Robinson runs. And if you look at the Sean McVays of the world, you know, when he had Matthew Stafford, even when he had Jared Goff, he elevated, helped elevate those guys' game. And I really feel like the same thing with Zach Robinson. He's going to do things to put Penix in positions to succeed. And I really feel like the reason they drafted Penix is because they felt like he fit this offense perfectly. And I said that when they drafted him, it's like I always state when they say who do you compare Michael Penix to? To me, he's a left-handed version of a Matthew Stafford with more athleticism as far as he can run, even though Matthew Stafford can run as well. But I really think that Michael Penix is one of those guys that he's an elite arm talent. Like I'm not saying he's an elite quarterback yet because he hasn't proven that on the NFL level, but he's an elite arm talent, meaning he can make every throw on the field. And that's one reason why Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay wanted Matthew Stafford on the Rams. It wasn't that Jared Goff wasn't a good quarterback. It was just that he's not an elite arm talent as far as throwing the ball with, accuracy, throwing the ball with, that velocity, those no look passes and the things that you see Matthew Stafford do on a football field can't be taught. And that's the same thing with Michael Penix. When you go back and look at that one game that he threw the ball on the sideline to Cordell Hodge, and I think they were in like a cover two, and he just throws the ball in a real tight window where I was still to this day, I'm trying every time I go back and watch that throw, I'm like, how did he fit that football in that window? That's the type of things that I think that separates Michael Penix. I keep talking about it. It's the arm talent. That's what separates him. Is his ability, to throw the ball with a lot of velocity, accuracy, but he's one of those guys that can also throw with touch, and he can touch every part of the field with throwing the ball. Like he can make any throw. He's not afraid to make any throws, and he can put the ball, the ball placement. He can put the ball in tight windows. So I really feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Michael Penix. I think they thinking just looking at last year's stats. If you didn't watch any of those games of Michael Penix, and you just look at what he put up, his numbers were not gaudy. Like we went 1-2 with him starting. And I think he only completed, when I looked it up, I think like 58% of his passes. So that's not good. When you're under 60% completion percentage, they usually say that that's not a good number. You want to be somewhere in the 60s, like 65%, 62%. You want to be over 60% completion percentage to be considered a decent quarterback in the NFL or a good quarterback in the NFL. The elite guys usually are in the upper 60s. So like the 65%, 63, 64. Those are where the Matt Ryans in his career, the Matthew Staffords, the guys that we consider the best of the best, the Pat Mahomes, the Josh Allens, those guys are high 60 or mid 60%. They're not under that baseline of 60% completion percentage. But I really feel like the numbers were kind of skewed in Michael Penix's situation because he only had the 3 games to go by. So for one, they didn't have him throwing the ball 40 times a game when he actually got into the game. For two, he didn't have the chemistry with the guys, the starters and things of that nature. So I expect that to get cleaned up. And I expect Michael Penix, if you go look at his college career, he was one of those guys, especially at Washington, when he completed more than 60% of his passes. He was in the 62, 63, 64. He was in the high 60s when it comes to completion percentage. And he didn't throw a whole lot of interceptions either. So that's the things I look at for a quarterback. I'm looking at your completion percentage. I'm looking at your touchdown and interception ratio. I'm looking at your decision making. But above all of that, I look at the eye test because I really feel like a lot of, analysts or whoever you want to state, a lot of fans, just casual fans, they don't watch the games. If you don't watch the games, even these guys that talk about the Falcons on ESPN and stuff, I feel like a lot of them don't necessarily watch all of the games. They don't tune into the games because the Falcons are not necessarily a huge they're not known to be like one of those blue blood type franchises. We're not the Packers, we're not the Giants, we're not in one of those markets where, you know, they like to focus on the Dallas Cowboys and teams like that, the Kansas City Chiefs now, the Eagles. They're not one of those type of franchises. So I really feel like they don't give the Falcons the benefit of the doubt when it comes to a lot of situations. So they're gonna find out the hard way. I think that Michael Penix is going to be a really, really good quarterback in the league, and that's why the Falcons were not afraid to double dip at quarterback last year. They were like, "Hey, we got Kirk Cousins, but we want to have Michael Penix in our back pocket because Zach Robinson, Raheem Morris, and the coaching staff went and worked him out at Washington, and they talked about the arm talent. They couldn't pass up on the arm talent. That's the reason that they really wanted him. What he has on his left shoulder, that arm, you can't teach that. The way that he can spin the ball, you can't teach it. And let's see here. I'm gonna scroll down. We have probably a couple more minutes, and then I'm gonna get ready to run up out of here. And Diamond Honey 81 says, I like that Russell Wilson is going to the Giants. How do you think he will pan out there? That's a great question. I think with Russell Wilson, he'll have success because the Giants have a good offensive play caller with Brian Daboll, who was with Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills. When Josh Allen took off, Brian Daboll, who's the head coach of the New York Giants, was there with Josh Allen and helped him kind of develop and things of that nature as the offensive coordinator. I think Russ is one of those guys that the Philadelphia Eagles, the Pittsburgh Steelers should have kept. I don't know why they didn't keep him and why they went for an older Aaron Rodgers over Russell Wilson, because I believe at times last year Russell Wilson played really well. I think at this point he has more left in the tank than Aaron Rodgers. And with them bringing over DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks, trading him to the Steelers, I thought that they were doing that trade because they had Russell Wilson, who was already familiar with DK Metcalf, who played with him in Seattle. So I thought that was going to be a perfect marriage with those two guys because they played with each other. So they already kind of were familiar. He could have taught him the offense there in Pittsburgh and, got him up to speed and things of that nature. But then they turned around and brought in Aaron Rodgers. So I really feel like that was the biggest mistake that the Steelers could have made. I could be wrong, but I like Russell Wilson as a quarterback. I think he'll have some success with the Giants because they have weapons. Malik Neighbors is a really, really good wide receiver. He just didn't have a good quarterback throwing him the ball last year. There were a lot of times where he was wide open on his routes and stuff like that, but the quarterback just couldn't get the ball to him. So I really feel like the Giants have some sneaky weapons over there. They just didn't have a quarterback that can get the job done. So I think Russ can have success. Now, will he have more success than he had in Pittsburgh, where they actually made the playoffs? I don't think so. I think that Pittsburgh was a better spot for Russ because the Pittsburgh Steelers are just a better overall team. When you look at, Mike Tomlin as the head coach, the Steelers always have a good defense. And then the offense over there with Pittsburgh, they had some good players on the offensive side of the ball as well. With George Pickens last year, with Freiermuth as the tight end, and Najee Harris in the backfield, Warren in the backfield. I just feel like the Steelers are just a better organization for when it comes to like winning and things of that nature at this point than the Giants. The Giants have been they've been having a lot of down years. Ever since Eli Manning left, the Giants haven't been the same since they lost Tom Coughlin. So I think Russ will do well, but I think he would have been a better fit in Pittsburgh. I don't know why they decided that they didn't want to keep him. And let's see here. We're going to scroll. Andre says, laugh out loud. Now, I bet the New Orleans Saints wish they would have taken Sanders now, though. Exactly. That was foolish. Tyler Shuck, all right, good luck. I mean, at the end of the day, Shador was right there for the taking. I feel like a lot of teams missed the boat on Shador. Even the Pittsburgh Steelers I was just talking about. If you're gonna get rid of Russ and Justin Fields for an older Aaron Rodgers, you might as well just drafted a rookie guy and let them be the starter, like a Shador Sanders, because Shador Sanders He's proven throughout his college career. For one, he's a son of Coach Prime, so we know that he's worked with the best coaches, the best quarterback coaches. He's been working with Tom Brady for I don't know how long as as a mentor. So I really feel like it was just foolish. That whole situation was just foolish. And Dre says, I hope and pray Mike Ford makes it though. I like and love him when we first had him. Then the Seattle Seahawks snatched him up off the practice squad. Oh yeah, I forgot about Mike Ford. He'll probably be on the team. I mean, Mike Ford is a special teams ace, so he was brought over for that particular reason. So he'll be here. I don't see him going nowhere. Let's see, unless things just get super tight as far as Kobe Bryant and all those guys just outplay him. But Mike Ford was a special team. He's a special teams. That's his specialty. So I don't think he will be going. Let's see here. And Dre says, why are people talking about that it was stupid to give up a first round pick for next year to move back into the first round to go get James Pierce Jr.? Because they're not too smart. Like I said, they sound just like the people that said why the Rams traded away all these picks to get Von Miller, to get Jalen Ramsey, and then they paid it off with a Super Bowl. And then why they giving up all this draft capital? It was worth it. Like I always talk about, if you want to get value, you get what you pay for. If you want to get top talent, it's harder to find the Max Crosbys of the world, the fifth rounders, as far as elite pass rush. James Pierce Jr. going in from last year's draft, so not this draft that just passed, but the 2024 draft. I had started seeing people saying James Pierce Jr. was the best prospect at the end of the 2024 draft. They were saying in 2025 he was thought to be the best prospect. And then they start saying he had character issues and all of that kind of stuff during the draft process, which I'm not buying into. I heard that Michael Parsons of the Cowboys was another guy that they said had character issues going into the draft. And then look at him now. This dude has had I think he's been in the league 3 to 4 years, and he had double digit sacks every single season, and he hasn't gotten any trouble off the field. So whatever those people that was saying he had some character issues behind the scenes, I don't know what they're talking about. Same thing with James Pierce. I'm not going to say that I know the ins and outs of whatever they were talking about with James Pierce off the field situation, or whether it was at Tennessee where he had some issues, but the dude can play football. The dude, like I said, coming out of the 2024 draft, they were saying that James Pierce Jr. was the best prospect going into the 2025 draft. So to me, it was well worth it giving it up. Basically, what the Falcons did was they drafted their first round pick for next year early. That's it. Because guess what? James Pierce Jr. is going to be on the Falcons next year. So at the end of the day, it's not going to hurt. It didn't hurt the Falcons by taking James Pierce Jr. a year earlier or taking your first round pick a year early. I don't think that really hurt us. As long as he gives us, some production, I really feel like it was a good move. And Bubba Guy B says, Utah Sports, that thank you for the entire stream, and we appreciate it. Hey man, I appreciate you, man. I thank you again for the super chat. The $5 super chat. At the end of the day, like I said, I love giving you guys content, and I appreciate you guys continuing to support the content. That's what it's about, man. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. And let's see. I'm gonna hit maybe 2 or 3 more comments, and then I'm gonna get up out of here. Cause like I said, man, we coming up on an hour and 10 minutes. But I appreciate you guys joining me, as always. And like I said, I'm gonna continue to keep bringing y'all content. It's probably gonna be more of these on Tuesday nights now that my kids and stuff are out for the summer break. I was doing a lot of Tuesday morning shows for What's the Word, Dirty Birds, but my night shows, my wife said it needs to be Jews days or Jews after dark. So it's gonna be one of those names for the after show. So instead of What's the Word, Dirty Bird, which that's like my morning show, it's gonna be Jews days or on Tuesdays, the night show. So y'all continue to support the channel. But let's see here. And Dre Murphy said, heck, as much as I don't like, let's see. He said, heck, as much as I don't like Justin Fields, I would have kept him over Aaron freaking Rodgers. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. To be honest, I don't even dislike Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields has a chance to do some things with the New York Jets. I think that was a good pickup by the New York Jets. To be honest, like at this point, like I said, Aaron Rodgers is over the hill. No disrespect. I loved his game when he was with the Packers. Think he was a great quarterback for a decade plus. But sometimes you just got to know when to let go. And at this point, I feel like Aaron Rodgers just needs to go ahead and hang it up. Like I don't really think that he has much left in the tank, to be honest with you guys. And I think what made him great is playing off script. I think Aaron Rodgers was a really good quarterback at the top of his game. But at this point, he doesn't have the ability to make guys jump off sides like he used to do and then scramble around and throw the ball deep. He doesn't have the ability to escape the pocket and do the things he used to do in the pocket. What made him special was his mobility and his ability to throw off platform. At this point, he's just a pocket passer. He's not mobile anymore, and that's what made him special. And sometimes you just gotta understand like what makes you great. And I feel like at this point, Aaron Rodgers is just playing to be playing. Like I really don't think that, and he could prove me wrong. So maybe I'll have to eat crow, and you guys can come back and tell me if I was wrong. If he balls out with the Steelers and somehow they make a deep playoff run or make it to the Super Bowl, then I'll come back up here and I'll eat crow. But I personally just think that Aaron Rodgers is past his prime and he's over the hill. I don't think that he has much left. That's just me personally. I would have stuck with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I wouldn't have went and got Aaron Rodgers because he didn't help the Jets. They were. I was told when he went to the Jets that the Jets would be a Super Bowl contender. They would be better, have a better record with him over the one kid that they had that they drafted. I can't think of his name at the time. At the moment, what was the kid's name that they drafted out of Utah? I believe it was no BYU. I can't think of his name right now, but he went like number 2 overall to the Jets. Y'all put it in the chat. I can't think of his name right now, but he was not much better than him. They won more games with the kid out of BYU that they had that everybody said was a bust, which he didn't play well, but Aaron Rodgers didn't do much for the Jets last year, and they did everything to please them. They moved heaven and earth. They went and got Devontae Adams. They pulled all kind of strings. They went out and got everything he asked for. They fired their head coach mid-season. They moved, they did everything Aaron Rodgers asked, and it didn't pan out. They didn't win much. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like I just feel like Aaron Rodgers is just, at this point, Father Time has knocked on his door. There it is right there, Zach Wilson. I couldn't think of his name. Thank you, John. Yeah, Zach Wilson. He was the guy that they said that, was a bust, and Aaron Rodgers was going to come in and they were going to win way more games, and Aaron Rodgers was going to make the Jets Super Bowl contenders again. And look what happened. He was there for 2 years, ruptured Achilles, I think, in his first game as a New York Jet. Last year, I think they won like 5 games, and Robert Saleh was fired mid-season. So let's stop with the Aaron Rodgers is going to save anybody. At this point, he's not in position to save nobody. He's not Aaron Rodgers of 2020 even. He's not the Pro Bowl superstar MVP. That's not him anymore. That's what he used to be. He's not that player anymore. And it's okay to understand that. Like that's not what he is anymore. And Dre says Aaron freaking Rodgers trying to do what Tom Brady did by going to another team and winning a freaking Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly. But the difference between him and Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, he chose his hand wisely. He called, he picked the right crop of players. He seen that the Bucks had a defense that was stout, top 10 defense, and then he seen that okay, they already have Evans, they have Godwin. Then he went and pulled over Gronk. Then he went and pulled AB over there. So that team was just super loaded. So I don't think that Tom Brady did really much special. I just think he had a really, really, you know, he had a lot of good players on that roster. So I think that's the biggest difference. Aaron Rodgers, if I was Aaron Rodgers, to be honest with you guys, and I could hand pick where I want to go, I think he should have went to the Vikings if the Vikings wanted him. I really feel like that would have probably been the best position for Aaron Rodgers is the Vikings because they got a bona fide number one, bona fide number two with Jettis, and they have a lot of weapons over there. Hawkinson at the tight end spot. They have a decent running back over there. So their team is like loaded. So I feel like if he was gonna go anywhere, and then Minnesota had a really good defense as well. So with that being said, I'm about to get ready to get up out of here. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to support the channel, continuing to support the content. Make sure you hit that like button for your boy. If you're new to the channel and you are joining me for the first time, or you just been watching my content, you haven't hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit that subscribe button for your boy. I'm going to definitely keep the content coming for you guys. So stay tuned to the channel. A lot more live shows and things of that nature coming up for you guys. A lot more content just in general. You guys know I try to drop videos at least once a day. If it's not a short, like a video on the channel. But y'all just stay tuned to the channel. Like I said, as we get closer and closer to the season, we're going to do a lot more, live shows and stuff like that. A lot more videos and possibly even do some giveaways. So y'all just stay tuned. But with that being said, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I hope you guys have a blessed night. Make sure you guys, stay safe and things of that nature. And I'll see you guys in the next live stream. But as always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed. Peace.